Welcome to your hydrogen sulfide safety training and development. Our agenda is going to be to define hydrogen sulfide. Where does hydrogen sulfide come from? The effects that hydrogen sulfide has on the body. What are the federal requirements of hydrogen sulfide? Some of the detection methods and emergency and rescue procedures. Hydrogen sulfide consists of 2 hydrogen atoms and 1 sulfur atom. Hydrogen sulfide is formed by the decomposition of organic, animal, and/or vegetable materials by bacteria. It is found in natural oil and gas operation, sewers, swamps, and a variety of biological processes. Characteristics of H2S. It is very, very toxic. It is colorless. It is very corrosive. It has a distinct odor at certain levels. It is soluble in water. It is flammable, and the density is heavier than air, which I'll explain a little bit more as we go through. Characteristics is very deadly and extremely toxic gas. Right? It has been known at certain levels to kill people. The most common thing that happens with H2S is when an individual breathes it, it has a tendency to render the olfactive nerve incapable. What does that mean? The olfactive nerve is your ability to smell things. When you breathe H2S in at certain quantities, it kills the olfactive nerve, which means you are no longer able to smell. At lower levels, it does smell really, really, really bad. However, when it gets at higher levels, it will kill that nerve and you will no longer be able to smell it. It is highly flammable. It's readily dispersed in wind, movement, or air current. Now, the vapor density of it is heavier than air, which means once released into the air, it will try to settle in lower areas, lower lying areas, right? In which we will talk later on about how to escape such things. It's highly corrosive to certain materials. When left in certain areas, you might be able to have an indication of H2S when you see metals start to rust more than other places. All right, the permissible exposure limits are 10 parts per million by OSHA, and once you reach levels of 50 parts per million, individuals should be evacuated to cleaner areas. Hydrogen sulfide at low concentrations has an offensive odor similar to rotten eggs. At slightly higher concentration, it will have a sweeter odor, much sweeter than, say, sugar. At high concentrations, H2S rapidly deadens the sense of smell, which we just talked about, that olfactive nerve. All right, so that's what H2S is and what it does. Now, where does it come from? Sources of H2S, workers involved in drilling and production operations are also from known sour gas areas, as well as some unknown wildcat areas are at risk from exposure to H2S. What does that mean, wildcat? That means you might find some areas of production of oil and gas to have H2S that is unknown. All right, it is recovered from natural gas and petroleum refinery operations, and it is converted to sulfuric acid or disposed of by burning or flaring. It is a useful gas once it goes through that separation process, and oil companies have been known to utilize and sell these things. So it is a useful gas, although it is quite deadly to the human beings. What are the effects it has on the body? Well, when the route of entry, the most common route of entry into the body is through inhalation. And when a person breathes it in, it goes directly into the lungs and into the bloodstreams. Now, what effects it has will depend on certain factors. How much time the individual is exposed, how often they are exposed, the concentration of the exposure, how much, and their susceptibility, or physiological makeup, which means it could range anywhere from how much they weigh to how old they are. So it has different factors on what H2S can do to you. Now, here are some of the symptoms if you're ever exposed: itchy, irritated skin, fatigue, stomach sickness, irrational behavior, loss of appetite, coughing, headache, lightheadedness, from anywhere from runny nose to unconsciousness is what H2S can do to you at certain levels. What does the federal government say about H2S? Well, exposure to H2S shall be controlled so that no employee is exposed to H2S, hydrogen sulfide, exceeding 10 parts per million during an 8-hour work shift in a 40-hour work week. Evacuation of the area shall be required if the concentration of hydrogen sulfide equals or exceeds 50 parts per million. Now, for those of you that may not understand what the parts per million means, well, the way it was explained to me a long time ago, if you take a 1 foot by 1 foot by 1 foot cube of air and you put 1 million air molecules within that 1 foot by 1 foot by 1 foot cube, and 10 of those are filled, 10 of those molecules are filled with hydrogen sulfide, well, that is your maximum allowable exposure. It is 10 of those 1 million molecules filled with H2S. When 50 of those million get filled, that's when individuals need to be evacuated out of the area, and certain measures need to be taken, maybe to ventilate the area or something else. All right, and that comes from OSHA. That is the federal requirements. That's what OSHA requires. Toxicity table means what effects does it have on the human body at certain levels. We're going back to that parts per million. At 4.6 parts per million, it's easily detectable because it does have a distinct odor. Once you start getting to 10 parts per million, that's your OSHA permissible exposure limit. That means that's the maximum allowable exposure limit by OSHA within an 8-hour period, 40 hours a week. All right. It also, at that level, you start beginning to feel eye irritations, right? Watery eyes and maybe some runny nose. At 27 parts per million, it becomes a strong, unpleasant odor. At 100 parts per million, that's when it becomes IDLH. IDLH means it is immediately dangerous to life or health. Severe coughing might happen, and eye irritation. At 100 parts per million is where it will have a serious effect on the olfactory nerve, what I just talked about a couple minutes ago. It will deaden your sense of smell. At 200 to 300 parts per million, severe eye inflammation and respiratory tract irritation. 500 to 700 parts per million could cause loss of consciousness and possible death within an approximate time limit of about 30 minutes. And that's not, well, I won't say it's proven, it is just an estimated time period. At 700 to 1,000 parts per million, rapid unconsciousness, which means at that level, you will become unconscious in a matter of seconds and possibly die. At 1,000 to 2,000 parts per million, unconsciousness at once. And it says even though you are moved to fresh air within a matter of minutes, death may still even occur because it does have an extreme effect on the body at that level. All right. H2S detection methods. Well, there are a number of ways to detect H2S: ampoules, litmus paper. There are the most common way is to utilize H2S monitors, electronic monitors, which have an ability to detect certain levels of H2S. And the way individuals are trained is they keep this monitor within their breathing zone, and when it does actually go off, they just leave the area as best and as quick and as safe as they possibly can. API 55 recommends a calibration test once per month. This should be completed with a calibration gas up to 50% of the maximum scale of the instrument, and those all fall within OSHA guidelines. Emergency procedures. If an unexpected or sudden gas release occurs, you should try to rely on your training to calmly handle the situation. Panicking will only make the situation worse, which means if someone panics, they usually have a tendency to increase their respiration rate, at which time, if it is H2S, they will increase their intake of the gas and speed things up, speed the effects of it up quite a bit. So the most common thing would be to do is to hold your breath, move upwind on crosswind. Get away from it as best you can. If breathing apparatuses are available, don your breathing apparatus to be able to continue your work, or maybe even try to figure out where the leak is coming from or where it's coming from, and maybe hopefully stop it. But if not, leave the area. Move quickly upwind to a safe breathing area to receive further instructions. Rescue procedures. Of course, no rescue procedure should be attempted without any type of breathing apparatus for that situation. And of course, we want to remove the victim to an area with fresh air. If breathing, administer oxygen if available. If the victim is not breathing, start artificial respiration, CPR, immediately. All right, keep the victim lying down with a blanket under the shoulders to keep airway passage open. Conserve the victim's body heat. If eyes are affected by H2S, wash them thoroughly with clear water, and so on and so forth. So that's the effects of H2S. Questions and tests will be handed out at a later date. Thank you for your time.